Hello and welcome back to another episode of MC Airsoft. My name is Mark, and today we're going to be discussing being a sniper in Airsoft, right? This is going to be part one of what's going to be a possibly rather long video series. We'll see. It might just turn into something I add videos to over time. We'll see. And to be clear, one thing we're going to discuss right off the bat is what do I mean by sniper, right? Because there's two different types of sniper in Airsoft. There's the basic version, which is I grabbed a sniper rifle off e-bike or Airsoft GI or wherever, your local store. I grabbed a sniper rifle, now I'm a sniper. Okay, well, that's not really what we're going to be talking about. I'm not going to knock anyone. If you go to your local pickup games and you're in that, what I'm going to call marksman role, it's not really a sniper role, but it's a marksman role. Where you're just one of the squad, your gun just shoots a little bit further kind of thing. Okay. Maybe you could call that a DMR role, a designated marksman rifle role. Most people are going to think of something more like this, basically an AR platform or some kind of Dragunov AK platform, whatever the case is, but it's set up for longer range. Maybe it's got a scope on it, longer barrel maybe. It's built for range, right? Yeah. That same kind of thing is your guns that should not be sniper rifles, DMRs, whatever you want to call it, but they can kind of fill that role. An example would be like the Scorpion Evo, right? I hear real good things about the accuracy, about the range. Not really what we're talking about. I've never been around one personally, so I can't speak with any experience on the subject. But, you picked a gun, it's real accurate, great, good job. Doesn't really make you a sniper, but, have fun. You do you. I'm not going to knock anyone for playing Airsoft how they want to play Airsoft, as long as it's safe, right? And doesn't ruin the experience for everyone. So what we're going to be talking about more is a couple different levels, depending on what you're doing, right? And we're going to be talking about a couple different levels of sniper. And the first level is DMR. Right, like I was saying, it's going to be something, maybe M16, like maybe it's not, right? Maybe you're just the designated marksman of your group. Maybe you have a fire team size element, a 4-man squad, 4-person squad, whatever, and everyone else's guns are built out, shooting high rate of fire, maybe low FPS, built for running around indoors in your CQB environment, and then you're the one guy with, instead of maybe a 10 or 11-inch barrel like this one, maybe you've got a 14, something like that, kind of more of your recce kind of rifle, as YouTube likes to call it nowadays. 16-inch barrel, 14-inch barrel, somewhere in that range. And it's just built for a little more accuracy, a little bit heavier BBs, better hop up, whereas everyone else in your squad might be pushing either like a machine gun roll, a breacher roll, something like that. You're still at rifleman limits. You're still shooting under that 400 FPS here. It might be different where you are. You're still shooting under that limit. You can still go full auto if your sight allows that, but you can reach out and touch a little bit better. And it's just a build mindset when you're doing it. The next step up would be something of a air quotes, true designated marksman, right? I mean, true designated marksman is whatever your squad needs it to be, right? But next squad, this step up in your squad might be something of this nature. It's shooting 470. It's limited to semi-automatic only. Mechanically, there's no MOSFET in here. But I can reach out and touch close to what the sniper rifles are doing. I can reach out and touch it with a couple shots. I can get out to 250 feet, whatever that is in meters. I can reliably punch out past the regular ARs, rifleman style builds for my events that I go to. I can regularly reach out further than most of those, and I'm just shy of where a 550 FPS semi-automatic only kind of rifle would be, right? Where you're getting those are more, maybe depending on your event, those might still be semi-automatic, and maybe those are your true DMRs. This is more of like a pseudo DMR. For my area, it's shooting 470, allows me to get to 50 feet minimum engagement distance instead of 100. So it's right below that, so I can still come around, not corners, but shorter distances. If I close a distance on a DMR, they have to switch their pistol. I can still keep using my rifle for a few more feet, right? So it's a little more versatile. You really shouldn't be shooting people inside of buildings with it. Still not doing CQB with it. You can, but depending on your environment, maybe it's across a warehouse or something. As long as you're still outside of that minimum engagement distance. So it's just a little more versatile, but I still got the scope. It's getting into the realm of filling the same role as a real squad marksman role, like the Mark 12 was designed for, where the Mark 12 still shooting a 5.56. Sure, it can push out another 100 meters over an M16. It's got a suppressor. So maybe if you need to take a little more sensitive of a shot, okay, it's got better optics so you can get better identification on target, cool, a little bit better accuracy from the person's perspective. Obviously scopes, they do not affect how accurate the gun is, right? In real life airsoft doesn't matter. Scopes don't affect how accurate the gun is, they affect how accurate the person is, right? So that's kind of the DMR role, where you're not really a sniper, you're not really filling a sniper role, but you're bridging that gap, right? You're extending the capabilities of either your faction or your squad or your platoon or whatever you want to call it. Next step up is going to be your actual sniper rifles, air quotes still because it's airsoft, right? And what those are is meeting field requirements. So maybe it's 550 bolt action, 500 semi-automatic, depends on where you play, right? But it's built out to that limit of the FPS allowance for sniper rifles. So where I play 550 FPS with a bolt action, so it's built out to that limit, and it's built to forsake everything else. Who cares about rate of fire? Who cares about anything else? As long as you can take heavy BBs, lift them, and throw them very far for airsoft, right? Obviously, like my real bolt action is zeroed at 100 meters, right? So it's a little different in airsoft, where 100 meters is kind of the max range you can get out of bolt action. But the premise is there in terms of scale compared to other airsoft guns, right? So, and that brings us to the first topic, picking. This video is going to be about picking which guns you're going to be using. The first topic is going to be FPS, right? So FPS restrictions or event restrictions. So if you're going to an indoor only field where they cap everything at 350, okay, well, you might be able to still build out in that first category where you and 3 other buddies or whatever the case is, you're rolling out. Everyone else has got DSGs or high voltage lipo guns where they're rolling a high rate of fire, high trigger response, and your job in your team is to take either those longer range shots if you can get them, or the more accurate shots where he's just sticking out a toe, or they're just sticking out a toe, or they're just sticking out a finger, limited engagement, maybe their head's popping up and down. Okay, so you still have to deal with that FPS restriction, but you can reach out and touch, right? You can touch them a little bit easier. Okay, so that's something to think about. FPS restrictions. So maybe it's not 350, maybe it's 450 for everything, right? Or at least everything other than a rifleman. Okay, so if your limit is for semi-automatic is the same as your limit for bolt action, maybe go with the semi-automatic instead, right? So if it's 450 across the board, okay, and you have the choice between a DMR and a bolt action, you should probably go with the DMR, right? Because until you're getting to a certain point, right, where you got guns on the market now for bolt actions that can clear 700 FPS. Not saying anyone should, but it can handle that, and it can handle it repeatedly. It can handle it without dying, flaming, screeching, gear broken death. Okay, so maybe go with your DMR if it's 450 or 475 like this one. Okay, or if the field doesn't allow for longer engagements, right? So if you're playing in the trees, you're playing still maybe in a mountain kind of environment, movement on urban terrain kind of environment. Okay, maybe that's the place you want to take a DMR over a bolt action. Bolt action is probably going to be more consistent. It's probably going to give you that first round on target a little bit easier, better grouping. So maybe you can shoot through windows, not shoot through glass windows, obviously, but like limited engagement. Someone pops their head up through a window, you can pop them. Okay, great. Problem is you're not going to get the follow-up shots, and also you're not going to get the suppressing shots, right? So if I'm over here with my bolt action and all of a sudden like 5 people come running at me, and let's say my engagement distance is 50 feet because it's only 450 FPS, okay, and they start off at 100 feet, start running towards me, how quickly can they cover that 50 feet before I can no longer use my bolt action? I have to switch to my pistol, right? And my pistol's plenty accurate, but I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to want to have to take that bet if I can avoid it. So, like, I'm not in the best shape in my life. I can still cover 50 feet in a couple seconds, right? So even if you're spot on with the bolt action, you figure, okay, fire, rack, get back on target, fire. How quickly can you do that? Are you going to be able to shoot all 5 people before they hit that 50-foot mark? Probably not. Probably not, right? So the event's going to dictate the kind of ranges you have, is going to dictate what kind of what kind of airsoft gun you can bring, right, to fill that role. Now, another problem you might run into is restrictions on snipers in general. So the Milsim West tax op, for example, says 2 sniper teams per faction. Okay. Now, in the tax op, it doesn't say how big a sniper team can be. Okay, is that 2 people, sniper spotter? Is that 5 people? I would have to actually ask them. I do not plan on attending Milsom West anytime soon, and especially as a sniper, so I don't really care that much. But I know Lion Claws, the last Lion Claws event I went to, you were restricted to, you had to have a spotter with you. Okay, so that's a restriction. And you had to apply to be a sniper. Okay, so these are all things to consider. You might buy your fancy bolt action Novrich, whatever it is, and kit it out with the best internals, whatever you deem the best to be, and then go to an event and they might say, no, where's your spotter? Okay, where's your team? Did you get approval from your command? For milsims that might happen. For pickup games, you might not be allowed to use it because it's an unfair advantage maybe, or it doesn't meet that field's requirements, something of that nature. So do your research even before you buy one of these guns. Do your research so you know what to take to that field or that event, right? So distance of engagement, and I hit on this already. So one thing to keep in mind is how far do you reasonably plan on shooting? Right, so you figure, let's say that you build out your bolt action 300 feet, point target, no problem. I can take headshots at 300 feet, no problem. I'm not saying I can. Don't believe that anyone in Airsoft really can, where it's that consistent, but sure. Let's say you built it. That's fantastic. And then you show up to your field, and the longest distance you can see at any given time is 150 feet. Okay, so did you need to build it out that far? No, but it's nice, okay. But the problem is, again, how quick are they going to be able to cover that 50 feet? And are you going to be able to fall back in time? Or are you going to be able to pull out your pistol and go to work in time? Those are things to consider. You might build the most accurate bolt action or DMR or whatever the case is. You might build the most accurate airsoft gun ever, but if you can't put it to work, what's the point, right? Like, I will take this guy all day at shorter distance over that one. This Mark 12 down here, much more accurate, much longer range. Okay, that's fantastic. But if I'm playing in, we have a field in the area that's a little more CQB, not as long a distance, okay? There's hills, there's bushes, there's old buildings. It is a open to the public historical site. There's not a lot of distance there where we play specifically. So something like the Mark 12, while it's fantastic for those 1 or 2 shots that I do get, the Mark 18 is going to be more universal, right? It can reach out kinda as far. Okay, it's still shorter distance, but it can reach out there. It can lob them out there. But the Mark 18 is going to be a lot easier if I do have to go into the buildings or around the brush or whatever the case is. It's also more reliable. That's a me thing, being that I tech on my own guns, whatever. And so you got to think distance of engagement. Yeah, it's 100-foot engagement, minimum engagement distance, but if you're only shooting out to 150 feet, Something like this, which has good range, it can clear that 150 feet no problem, is going to be just as good, half the weight. It's and it's going to be fine for what you need it for. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. And the fourth one, or the next one, is it's fourth on my list over here, which I already kind of hit on, is team/spotter. Now we'll go into further videos on how to properly utilize a spotter, okay? But for airsoft, okay, because they're not actually spotting, it's just the guy or girl or whatever who follows around the sniper, right? Um, okay, but we'll go into that later. But how your team/spotter. Okay, if you're rolling with a four-man team, there's someone already on the team who's playing as a sniper. Unless you can communicate with them and maybe rotate or whatever the case is, who's playing sniper that day or that game, has maybe pick something else, right? Do something to support your team. Does your team have comms as well, right? Because as a sniper, you're more likely to be either left behind somewhere, not out of malice, but like you're hanging out providing overwatch, or you go off on your own up a hill to provide overwatch, or you're just going and checking something else. Do you have a comms system? Without comms, you might as well not play as a sniper most of the time. Right, now, again, there's the designated marksman role, sure, or the just longer range rifleman role, sure. Okay, but if you're planning on being a sniper in airsoft, yeah, make sure you have comms, right? Without comms, you're just a marksman. You're not relaying intel, you're not doing any of those things. There's less of a point to doing it. So, not to say that there's still not a point to doing it. You'll find your shots, right? But there's less of a point to doing it. So, do they have comms? Would the way your team plays, would it be better to have a LMG, right? For instance, right now, you can get a one of the baseline Novrich bolt actions for about the same price as with a scope as a LMG with a box mag. A lot of the times the LMG is going to have an advantage there if your sight allows full auto, right? So that's something to consider. What does your team need? Now, not saying don't play it. If it's fun to you, you can still play it, obviously, but it might be better, more beneficial to base that around your team. And then, do you have a spotter like we talked about before? Okay, certain events are going to require, but even if they don't, it's always a good idea have someone who's playing that spotter role. And it's hard to recruit a spotter. I played as a sniper for several years, 4 or 5 years. And I rotated through several spotters. Part of the reason is because the way I like to play is boring to a lot of people. I like the more traditional sniper role of stalking, hunting and stalking, but it's boring to a lot of people, especially when their guns don't reach out as far as yours. They're not taking those shots, but having a spotter is crucial. Okay, someone who can watch your back, someone who has maybe a under 400 FPS gun, so they can cover you if people start closing distance. A sniper paired with an LMG is devastating. Okay, so because you start popping off rounds at distance with a sniper, okay, and then they start closing that distance, and as soon as they cross that threshold into the range of the LMG mows them all down. Okay, it is devastating. And then if they go hide, okay, you can do talking guns with a bolt action or DMR or whatever, a sniper rifle and an LMG, and it is devastating. We will talk about that in a future video. So, probably the same video as the spotter. So keep an eye out for that. That's the general overview, giving you some considerations. I can't tell you which guns are best. I know that's what a lot of people are looking for on YouTube. Sorry, can't really help you. Can't really tell you what guns are best. I can only give you my recommendations for what considerations I would make when buying a bolt action. And remember, sniper rifles should never be your first gun. Okay, if you're getting your first gun, get something like this. Because if you get something like that, you aren't going to be able to play half the time, half the distances, half the events, half the fields. Okay, you can't play. And you can play with that pretty much everywhere, maybe with a little bit lower power spring, okay, for some fields. But you can play with that pretty much anywhere. And if you buy that, hate it, you might hate Airsoft. If you buy that, it's going to be okay for most people. You might decide you like AKs, you might decide you like pistols, you might decide you like something else down the line. But that's going to be with you always, right? That is very specialized. Don't get anything specialized for your first gun, even if you have the money to make it good. So, with that being said, until next time, my name is Mark, and stay safe and stay hydrated.